I'm Judy Shaw for NYSE Floor Talk. Joining me today is Craig Unger. He is founder and CEO at Hyperproof. Craig, it's wonderful to have you here. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Judy. Great to be here.
So, Craig, tell me about Hyperproof and how you're disrupting compliance management in today's environment.
So Hyperproof is disrupting compliance by allowing organizations to really scale up the amount of work that they do when they're asked to do more and more different compliance frameworks. If you look at the government and the regulatory bodies, they're becoming very, very active. You can see it especially in the EU, you can see it in the United States. We started looking at it from the information and security perspective, but then we kind of drew concentric circles to privacy, to ESG now, which is so crucial, and then even financial compliance. And so organizations that have to do compliance across all of those areas, they can't really afford to scale their organizations up. So software like Hyperproof makes it much more efficient, much more effective for them to manage all their activities and then scale up without having to hire a whole lot more people.
All right, so Craig, you recently raised $40 million in a challenging environment for startups. Tell me, what sets your approach apart?
Approach to raising or approach? Well, I mean, for us, it was an interesting raise. One thing that made it different was that we, at our growth, were sitting somewhere in between what you would think of as typical VC fundraising and growth fundraising, because we're growing quite fast, but our revenue is such that it got growth investors pretty interested. So we had a pretty big portfolio of companies to choose from. I mean, we were able to generate meetings and kind of tell our story enough times that we actually had a lot of interest. So really, we just, with our product and the logos that we have, the size of the organizations that use Hyperproof, made it a little bit easier to go to a much broader range of investors and say, hey, take a look at what we're doing and take a look at who relies on us. And Judy, if you think about the kind of data that they put into Hyperproof, it's some of their most important data. It's their compliance data. It has to be super secure. And so when you think about organizations like that, trusting Hyperproof, it makes investors take notice. So it was still a process because it's a difficult time, but it ended up being really fruitful.
And tell me, what role does AI play in your software?
Well, in artificial intelligence, obviously it's affecting everything. In the compliance area in particular, there's probably three things I would point out. One is what we call horizon scanning, and that's the ability to look out across the entire world, because compliance is a worldwide type of venture, and see which new regulations are coming out. That's one of the hardest things to do in compliance, is to keep up with what's coming out. So that's one thing. The other thing would be transaction screening. So looking at, and this is a perfect example, we're sitting here on the NYSE and you have trades going on, you might have bad actors in those trades. So how do you make sure that the usage patterns and the activity patterns of folks doing the trade match somebody who you can trust versus somebody who's a bad actor? That's the second one. And then the third one I would say is creating your policies. All of compliance relies on having a very strict set of policies that your organization operates to. It's very timely to construct those. It's very time consuming, I should say. Very time consuming to review those. And so if you could have AI with a prompt create your policy for you by giving it, saying, hey, we're a financial services institution, we want a privacy policy. It gives you such a big head start. Now, of course, you have to be careful and you don't want to totally rely on that, but it's a great start. The one other thing I would call out too, which is a little bit of the other side of your question, is AI itself has to be compliant. And that, I think, is a big piece of it, because AI, if not used right, could almost be viewed as malware if it's not used in the right way in an organization. So large organizations have to figure out, how am I going to see what I'm doing in AI, and how am I going to turn off what needs to be done? So there is that side of actually making sure AI doesn't kind of go crazy like we see in these movies proverbially, and do any bad things. Yeah.
All right, and finally, tell me, what's next for Hyperproof? What are you focused on?
So Hyperproof is in a very fast growth mode. We're using the funds for a number of key things. One is we're going to be going international. Right now we have international customers, but we've been very US focused in our marketing and our sales. It turns out that there's a lot of sophistication in the EU. They've been doing compliance for a lot longer than we have in the United States. And we feel with our product, the more you know about compliance, the more you like Hyperproof. So we're definitely going to go to the EU. We're also continuing to grow into larger organizations. So we have some really nice, very large organizations that work in security, in software, in financial services, government, healthcare. And so we want to start to explore those verticals further, and then even look at other verticals. So I think really it's about those two things. And then the funding also allows us to continue to hire more engineering and put more into marketing, and then also elevate the brand. And that's a key part. I mean, Hyperproof has won as kind of the #1 GRC IRM system in the world in G2's ratings, which is very important for software startups to look at a company like G2 and how they rate. And so we want to keep on building that up.
All right. Well, Craig, great to talk with you. Thanks for joining me on Floor Talk today.
Thanks, Judy. My pleasure.